Even after recording 46 sacks last year, will Florida State's pass rush improve in 2024?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you being here with us on the Locked On Seminoles channel. I'm going to be talking about Florida State's defense today, and it's a lot of fun because we're talking about the pass rush, how it impacts everything else in the defense, including interceptions, getting after it in the run game, changing the way teams go after Florida State's defense. So that is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down and the sports stop sporting like we want them to. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all its customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The pass rush. It's one of the most fun topics to discuss in all of college football, pro football, or any other level of the sport. Florida State was elite at it last year. Period. 46 sacks. Some of you are probably saying, Brian, why are you even bringing this up? How are you going to surpass 46 when you lose Jared Verse? And by the way, Fisk is also in the NFL as well. Quality question. Notice I said improve the pass rush, not improve the sack total. The two are not the same. Now, if you want to just go over under on 46 sacks, I'd go under. There's a difference here. And as I go through the statistics, I will prove it. But number one here, again, they had 46 sacks last year. It's elite. I believe they're number 4 in the nation. That's pretty good. And they also had a lot of different guys getting after it. It was kind of a race, if you will, for the Noles to reach the opposing quarterback, which is pretty cool. By the way, the play that I will never forget is Jared Verse basically launching a gator into the quarterback at the end of the year. That's one of the funniest plays of all time that I've seen. Just shows you how talented that young man was and how motivated he was as well. So here are some of the stats that I find interesting because while they had the 46, and again, it's 4th in the nation last year, in 12 of the 14 games, the Noles had at least 2. At least 2. The only game that FSU, based on CFBstats.com, that's my stat site of choice. It's very informative nationally and basically for any team, all 133 from last year. You're looking at a scenario where the only guy that avoided the Noles, and he got hurt and missed part of the game because they still beat him up, was Riley Leonard at Duke. He's now at Notre Dame, ironically. He's on the schedule this year for Florida State. But otherwise, they got at least 2 sacks in all but one other game. That was UGA when everybody was gone. They already left for the NFL draft, training, blah, 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 whatever you want to say. And here's the other part. This isn't a team that's void of talent. Obviously, the recruiting class is good. And obviously, you have Patrick Payton back, the redshirt junior, probably the odds-on favorite to be the best edge rusher in the ACC, maybe the best pure edge rusher in college football. He's certainly in the discussion. He will have more opportunities, but he will also go up against more teams, more chips, more double teams, opportunities for teams to get after him. That's okay. Peyton may even drop a little bit statistically in some areas or in some games because teams are like, okay, Patrick's not beating us. They double him all the time. Well, you still have other guys. Daryl Jackson, Joshua Farmer, the former Gadsden County high school players, now playing for the Noles. I think they're going to be okay with that. So will Marvin Jones. So will everybody else. I mean, Byron Turner, etc. They have plenty of guys. The funny thing about it is Florida State's depth at D tackle, we weren't sure about last year. They came through in a lot of key situations. Guys like Daniel Lyons, etc., have played a little bit, and Farmer has moved into the lineup and done good. They've got plenty of young talent like KJ Sampson. I'm very excited about because you can't teach 320. He's a big guy in that range. And having a guy like Brady Kelly is important for the opportunity to show the younger guys the ropes on how you get ready. Even though he's not starting, he's somebody that Mike Norvell has brought up in press conferences, including his last one, KJ as well, ironically. So the D tackles might go up in sacks while the D ends go down a little. But to be honest, anytime a team has better interior pass rush, the quarterback is just doomed. You're blocking the man's vision. You're also making him move his feet immediately and oftentimes backwards as the pass rushers, somebody like even Aaron Hester, who's third team, and he'd play a lot more for most schools. If he's coming off the edge, Turner's coming off the edge, Patrick Payton's coming off the edge, whichever guy, they're just running speed rush. Those D tackles push the QB back. They're going to get some freebie sacks. That's okay for Florida State. Who cares how it gets done? But it's very rare that interior guys are getting single covered play after play that are talented. And I think that both of the interior spots, and they'll change it up on who lines up at nose and who ends up lining up at D tackle. They'll move that stuff around. It won't matter because they're both athletic. I'm really excited for Darrell Jackson, by the way. Ward only knows he got a really raw deal from the NCAA last season after transferring from the University of Miami. But he's going to have his vindication beginning, I think, August 31st. They'll have a game under their belt. By then, everybody in college football know who he is because on the 24th, when Georgia Tech plays, I don't think their offensive line, which is just okay, will be able to handle him. They'll either have to double him or suffer the consequences, and college football will know about him. So I think the stats may go down to like 40, 42, but you'll see more key sacks, and especially in big situations. And you also see the ball go up in the air. This is the conjunction stat that I found surprising. Usually when you have a good pass rush, again, 46 sacks, and Florida State secondary was very, very good last year, you get a lot of picks. Without looking, A, how many picks do you think the Noles had last year? And B, where do you think that ranked? There are 133 teams in the FBS. Where do you think that ranked? I was surprised. This was one of the more difficult stats for me to look at because I was like, you got to be kidding. I did a pod about this a little while back, and I wanted to bring it back up because in conjunction with the sacks, this should be the bonus. Sometimes it's okay you don't get home, but the quarterback loses his footing. He's thrown off balance. They tell him not to, but you know how quarterbacks are. If they have a guy in their face, they oftentimes throw it up. You got to make a play on the ball. Don't leave anything for chance. Catch the football. It's one of my pet peeves, along with those stupid sideline penalties when a defender hits a quarterback going out of bounds. They're going to give the QB the benefit of the doubt. Don't hit him. Those are my two big ones. They only had 10 picks last year, which was 68th in the country. With Patrick being the guy back there coaching that secondary, they're good. I mean, Renardo's already balling for the 49ers, and they got other guys getting ready to go to the NFL. Got Jaron Jones. All these guys already went. I was surprised by that. So the sack total, if I had to guess, I'd go under, but I would go up with the interceptions. Now, you got to remember, this secondary, I still have no idea who's going to be like the number 2 at each corner spot, because even if they handed me their official under-the-radar depth chart from Mike Norvell's office, there's enough competition that may change before fall camp concluded, and quite honestly, even after the Georgia Tech game, because they only got 13 days before the game, and I think that will be a very interesting thing. Conrad Hussey, Ashwin Barker, Edwin Joseph, KJ Kirkland. It's hard to say which guys will step up at those nickel spots, free safety, right corner, left corner, whatever they do. Or Marion Cooper is back. Earl Little transferred from Alabama. There are so many good players. And you got Kevin Noles, too. Jabril Rawls has been brought up quite a bit during press conferences. I don't think we're going to have to worry about it. I am very high, A, that they'll get more than 10 picks, and I think they will be in the 13-14 range. I just don't think you're going to have 2 years in a row. Also, to that point real quick, looking at the Noles and their schedule, they have some good quarterbacks they're going to play against, but A, Georgia Tech's quarterback throws it up for grabs. He led the ACC in picks last year with 16. Thomas Castellanos, Florida State's a guy going against the guy that tore him up last year running. They'll surely do a better job keeping him in the pocket, and he does put the ball in harm's way. Only a true sophomore. Memphis, Seth Hennigan lost 4 of his offensive linemen, so the picks should be there for that reason. Cal just doesn't have the players up front. I don't think they can block Florida State. I think Mendoza, like their quarterback's from Miami. He's a good player, but he's going to be running for his life. I'm not sure Preston Stone and SMU, like they'll score some points. He's a good quarterback. Got good players at the skill spots. But did they have the guys, again, to block Florida State? The one that I'm curious about the most on the schedule is Kate Klubnik in Clemson. coming to Doak. He obviously had some good moments against Florida State last year, but also some disastrous ones. I have no idea what will happen there, but getting a pick wouldn't be surprising. Malik Murphy will probably be the quarterback for Duke. This will be his first year starting. Cam Ward at Miami, that'll be a battle. That'll be the hardest one. UNC doesn't even know who their quarterback's going to be. Riley Leonard will be back in Notre Dame. That's a tough battle. End of the year, Florida, who knows what the situation will be there. I think that program's in disarray. Again, 13, 14 picks is what I expect for the Noles this year. And to be honest, it could be higher. I'm not saying that for sure, but again, the odds that they only had 10 last year was pretty low. So we'll get into that. Next up, the pass rush impacts everything else. We're going to talk about the run defense because that's an area that's got to get shored up. That's next here on Locked On Seminoles. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to main your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit, only available to United States customers. Also, give a shout out to my guy, Spencer McLaughlin, because after you visit this site each and every day for the first listen, check out Spencer on Locked On College Football. He brings everything to you that you need to know what's going on with NIL, what's going on with recruiting, the polls, transfers, who's hurt, all the different things as we approach college football season. So again, check out Locked On College Football today after you get done checking out Locked On Seminoles. Now let's talk about the Noles run defense. This is something I talked about a few times in the summer, and I wanted to bring it back up because we've had a little bit of discussion from Norvell and some of the coaches. Fuller and all of them have pretty good players to work with, but they did last year too. And even with Verse, the following statistic is still surprising to me. And every time I look at it, I ask myself, why? And there's a couple of things. There are two stats I'm going to put together here that play off of each other. Just for fun, again, guess, what did Florida State's defense allow rushing yards per game in 2023? And where did they rank? There are 133 teams in the FBS. This is not exactly the way it should be, but you know what? Sometimes you just fall short for whatever reason. Well, they came in 72nd in the country, despite all their talent, and gave up 152.2 yards rushing per contest. Obviously disappointing. Very disappointing. They only kept two teams under 100 yards. Now, Fisk was banged up part of the dime, Verse, etc., but they had run gap fit problems, meaning linebacker supposed to go here, safety there, whatever it is. They missed too many tackles fairly close to the line of scrimmage that pop big plays. And part of the reason they missed those tackles, they weren't positioned in the first place. You can go back and look at any film you want. When they give a nice overhead view of stuff, there's too many times, whether running back hit it or not, there was a cutback lane, etc., with a lot of guys. They didn't play as a unit as much as they should. And here's something that backs that up. This stat's probably worse, to be honest, than the 72nd ranking. Florida State, plays they gave up of 20 or more yards rushing. I'm going to talk about passing in a minute, but rushing. This is the worst stat probably on Florida State's team last year. Even the really nitty-gritty stats like this one. Dead last. 20-yard plays or more running the football teams really gashed them. They had 27 of them. That's 126th in the nation. There is no way that should happen at Florida State, even when Florida State is down. And obviously they weren't not last year going undefeated through the ACC title game. That's unexcusable. There's no way that's going to stay anywhere near that. A, B, not only will it go up, it should be top 40 every year. that number should be 15 or less. You're going to have a quarterback like Castellanos or somebody like that pop a few runs, and that goes against it because it was a passing play, but he takes off. Okay, that happens, but that's still on Florida State because I said it going into that game last year. Just make sure that if he runs, he has to go straight forward. Do not let him get outside your tackle box. If he does, it's a problem. He almost scored on one of those on a third down. There was an obvious passing situation. Can't have it. Can't have it. Well, they did number of times. Riley Leonard got outside the pocket a few times, even when he was hobbled. Kate Klubnik got outside the pocket a few times. They got to do that better. And then just flat out basic running plays. They would do great, and then they'd give up a big run. Sometimes not even 20 yards, but 15, 18-yard run. It changes everything. More consistency is demanded for Florida State to be good this year and have a run at the college football playoffs. If they do, if they get again, they're 152.2 yards last year. If Florida State could get that down to 120, it's only 32 yards. You're like, that's not a big deal. One more play where you stuff them. It's called a run stop on PFF. I mean, at the line of scrimmage, right behind. Per game, instead of a big run, completely changes your season because that run might be against Clemson, Notre Dame, Miami, one of those teams that's a very good football squad. And if you jack around and give them a freebie, some of those guys on those teams, like all three of those teams, have elite speed at their skill spots. It could be a reverse, one of Clemson's little shifty receivers. Both Notre Dame and Miami have guys that can fly at running back. You cannot have that happen. You'll lose. So we'll see how that goes. Just to parlay off of it, as you would expect, Florida State's ability to slow down the big passing plays wasn't too bad. It was actually 21st in the nation. It could still be better, but here's a little nuance before I give you the stat. A lot of teams were down to Florida State by the early third quarter. They didn't abandon the running game necessarily, but they knew they had to throw more. So the stats are a little skewed. They were 21st in the nation by allowing 20 or more yard passing plays 32 times. If they would have been a little bit less of an aggressive offensive team scoring, and they were the best offensive team in the league last year, that number is probably 15 or so, or like 20 or so maybe. Teams had to throw it. Like a lot of these stats are fourth quarter and stuff, so it's a little skewed. If they can even be close to that this year, maybe even better, it's possible because, again, they got a lot of guys in the secondary, and that rushing stat goes down to 120, hopefully even better. Florida State could have a top 10 defense, no problem. Must clear up the big plays. That's very, very important. Before I go into the final segment, something else to think about. How many times, if you watch Florida State football, it doesn't matter what year, and we're talking about situations like this where it's a specific stat, et cetera, and you're like, well, I wonder who it's going to be. I struggled because I asked myself that same question. I struggled to say, well, it will definitely be this defensive tackle or this defensive end because they have so many candidates. They're in a very good position. The depth has increased, especially up front and then in the secondary. Linebacker's still not where it quite needs to be. We're probably a year away from that, but Florida State is doing very well at accumulating talent from the portal and the high school ranks, and that's going to help them. When we come back here on Locked On Seminoles, we're going to continue with some stats and finish up with a little recruiting commentary. That's next here on Locked On Seminoles. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer and fewer games, and all the opportunities to watch sports are not there like we would want them to be. But FanDuel lets me keep going on with sports whenever I want, just like you can anytime you open the app and come up with something that you want to do whenever you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all its customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone each and every day all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We're looking at an opportunity here for Florida State's defense to go up. I still think the pass rush is the key. The Noles have been known for it forever. I still remember the days in the mid-90s when Renard Wilson was dominant, like he was a dude. And he wasn't even their best pass rusher. Peter Boulware had more sacks than him, if I remember correctly. those 95 to 97 teams were unbelievable in the middle of the field. But there are a couple other stats that I think this will really impact. And let's talk about one that all coaches, especially head coaches that are more offensive minded, still want to know what their defensive staff's going to do week to week. They ask them one question, this will be it. What are you guys planning on doing when it's 3rd and 5, when it's 3rd and 3, when it's 3rd and long? What's your game plan? Who you focusing on, etc. And it's verified. That's the deal. Like if you go 3 out of 14 on 3rd downs, even if you hit some big plays in the passing or running game or both, you're probably going to lose. You got to keep your D off the field, and you got to sustain drives when available. Florida State's defense is really good at it. They were 6th in the nation last year, 28.8%. Why? It's the pass rush. If you got into anything more than a 3rd and 2 and it gets a little iffy on whether you should run or pass, it's hard against the Noles. It's also ironic because this is just 3rd downs overall that they were good at that when their run defense wasn't great and they stuffed teams. When they were on the line, that bottom end, got to have it play on 3rd down. Florida State was really good. There were only 5 teams in the country better. Now, Versus part of that, Renardo and some of those guys, they were clutch. But again, the staff's been together. I have a lot of faith that they're going to be able, not only this year, but really moving forward, to hit big plays on defense because the secondary, again, should have more picks. Got a lot of depth, a lot of guys competing. You got Thomas at one spot. You got Ventrell Cypress at the other at the corner. And they got guys behind them pushing them. They better not screw around or they'll have somebody passing. Florida State is loaded there. There's no reason to believe they'll be outside the top 20 in 3rd down defense anytime soon. I don't care if it's this year or next, whatever. And the goal really should be top 10 every year now, minimum. It's not out of the question Florida State, at least among the FBS, Power 4 schools, is the best defense in the country on 3rd downs this year because they're so balanced. You got DJ Lundy, 5th-year senior at linebacker. You got Cam Riley transferred over from Auburn. You got Nicholson, Cryer. You got some athletes. They're not super deep. That's my only concern. Mentioned a million times. Linebacker is the one concern if they have any injuries. But those guys, if they play at a pretty good level and they're fortunate enough to stay basically healthy, why would Florida State not have a top 10 defense on 3rd downs? Look at it from the other perspective. Kind of like a debate with somebody. Are you really understanding what they're saying? Because in this case, it's really hard to fathom. Why would they not with as many players they got coming back? They're massive up front. They got depth and they got speed. So it's proven. Next, and this is kind of a fun stat. Most people just say, what's your red zone defense? I go one step further. What percentage of red zone visits by your opponent did they score a touchdown? If you hold them to a field goal after they're on like the 19-yard line, no offense, I don't care. I don't care. I'm good with that. Do not allow 6. Florida State's going to score in the 30s. If they're giving up field goals when the other team gets into the red zone, that team's in trouble. Last season, they were pretty good at it, but they could even be better. 53.3% of the time when the opponent entered the red zone, the Noles did a good job, held them down, just over 46%, not even scoring. 53% touchdown, that's pretty good. 27th in the nation, gave up 24 scores. That's not bad. I think it could be better. I'm actually a little bit surprised it was as high as it is. And here's something else. Schedule matters. You got Miami, you got Notre Dame. They both have legit QBs. Excuse me. Florida State does not play. NC State, they got Grayson McCall that transferred over from Coastal, very veteran quarterback. And you got Louisville that's got Tyler Slulick, kid's been hurt a bunch, but very, very talented. Neither one of them are on the schedule. That matters in the red zone. When it gets congested, Florida State should be at an advantage there. Those aren't just good players. Those are guys, talk about the ND quarterback, Miami, they can get drafted. Okay, you may struggle a little bit there because they're going to make some pinpoint passes. Okay. But how many other guys, you look at the schedule and you go, we're in trouble. Preston Stone and the kid from Memphis, but they just don't have the lines, I don't think. I know I'm being mean here. Even if they hit a few, is Florida State going to lose? The kid at Memphis is good. I think he's one of the more underrated kids in the country, but they're not on schools that can be dominant. And we don't know what Klubnik's going to do. He was as non-clutch as it gets. He was terrible in the red zone last year. Against Duke, he had some disaster plays. He handed the game to Miami multiple ways. They beat him with a true freshman quarterback. That's not good. And then against Florida State, he obviously had the play where I'm guessing he held the ball about 5 seconds before Kalen DeWoche collided with him. He drops the football. DeWoche scoops and scores. Changed not only that game, but Florida State's season. Part of that is on Klubnik. So I think Florida State will do a pretty good job in these situations on third down. In part is because I'm not sure how many quarterbacks they're going to face that I'm like, I don't know if those guys, how great are they? And a few of the guys are going against, quite honestly, just don't have the personnel around them, especially blocking for them, to cause Florida State a problem. I will say this. They got North Carolina on the schedule this year, and they missed them last year when Drake May was there. They got a lot of confusion at quarterback, but they do play O'Mary and Hampton. If Florida State screws around, what I was talking about earlier with the run game defense, run gap fits, he is a dude. He might be as good a running back as there is in college football. He went for over 1,500 yards last year. Now, I know Florida State and everybody else is probably thinking, barring something unforeseen, we're going to load the box, and they should. But if they do figure out quarterback and it gets pretty decent, Hampton's a guy. Arm tackles won't get it done. You have to have your run gap fit schemed, perfectly executed, and you got to wrap up. He is 220 pounds and is not afraid of contact. Really good football player. Curious to see how Florida State does against him. To wrap up, I just want to mention something about recruiting. I saw this post on X. Florida State is doing very well with the recruits they have. They've got 13 commitments. They have a rating average of 91.6 on 24/7 Sports. It's in the top 10 in the country. They're being very selective with who they go after. They're going to hit some, miss some here in the next couple of weeks. But the kids they have in the class already committed to the Noles, Norvell and his staff have done a very good job, and it's a really well-respected recruiting class. So hats off to Mike Norvell and everybody in Florida State's football program, because if you keep bringing in talent like that, these numbers I'm talking about, rush defense, sacks, etc., will be very high for the Noles. Once again, thank you for checking us out today, making it your first listen each and every day. You can find this podcast wherever you get them for free and on YouTube, part of the awesome Locked On Network, your team each and every day. And again, check out Spencer. He does a great job. I'm on his show quite often talking some recruiting, Locked On College Football. He's got a lot of stuff going on right now because that show has previews for teams. It's got recruiting news. It's got infrastructure about injuries and everything else that's going on. All the flips in recruiting, it's wild. So make sure you check out Locked On College Football next. This has been Brian Smith with Locked On Seminoles. Everybody have a good one.